0.0.36,412. We've all been there. Semantic versioning is kind of nonsense, and I don't know why it is the standard, but at the same time, it's the best thing we have, so it makes sense that we all use it. We have been religious about following semantic versioning over at Upload Thing, and we've actually gotten quite a bit of shit for it, because people are like, wait, you just started. Why are you on version 7? There's a reason. Semantics. And it's a weird reason, but as great as semantic versioning is, it also kind of sucks. It makes no sense. I just saw a new proposal that I'm actually pretty excited about. This comes from our friend Antfu. He's a legend in the Vue community that's been helping more with the general JS ecosystem tooling, also the creator of Vitesse. He knows his packages really well. Just one of those people that has made and distributed so many different things at NPM that if we disagree, I'm probably wrong. So I'm super excited to read through this with you, the new concept of epoch semantic versioning, and how it might, hopefully, maybe, solve all of the weirdness that we deal with semantic versions every day. Do you know what isn't weird? Today's sponsor. So let's hear from them really quick. Is your company trying to build a good mobile app? Do you have a bunch of web engineers that wish they could contribute to mobile? Or do you have an old React Native app that needs some love? Today's sponsor, Infinite Red, are the industry-leading experts here to help. They know React Native better than pretty much anybody. Their clients include a bunch of huge companies, many of which you're probably familiar with, from Zoom to Domino's. Yes, Domino's. If you're trying to build an AI app, you couldn't be in better hands. These guys wrote the book for AI. No, literally, one of the owners of Infinite Red, Gant, wrote the official O'Reilly Learning TensorFlow book. These guys get it. If you want to build a great experience for web and mobile, and you want your team to be able to contribute to it, you should at least reach out to Infinite Red. They're down to do a chat. They might end up being the ones who build your app, or at the very least, they'll help steer you in the right direction. I know these guys well. The CTO, Jamin, was one of my first community members and one of the biggest supporters when I first got started, and they've been awesome to work with for my entire experience in this space. If I was shipping a mobile app, they're the first people I would reach out to, and I recommend you do the same. Huge shout out to Infinite Red for sponsoring. Check them out today at soydev.link/InfiniteRed. If you've been following my work in open source, you might have noticed that I have a tendency to stick with zero major versions, like 0.x.x. For instance, as of writing this post, the latest version of Uno CSS is 0.65.3. If you're not familiar with Uno, it's his client-side Tailwind-like thing that has support for Tailwind syntax as well as a bunch of cool customization. I know people who are obsessed with Uno. It's like their favorite thing ever. He also did SlideDev, which is 0.50, and Unplug-in Vue Components, which is 0.28. Then there are even big projects like React Native, which is on 0.76. Yes, React Native hasn't had their V1 yet, as well as Sharp, which is the main image processing in Node on 0.33, etc. People often assume that a zero major version indicates that the software is not ready for prod yet. However, all of these projects mentioned here are quite stable and production ready, and they're being used by millions of people. Why are we doing this? Why do we have so many things that aren't even on version 1 yet? Version numbers act as snapshots of our code base. They help us communicate changes effectively. So we could say something like, this works in version 1.3.2, but not in 1.3.3, so there might be a regression. This makes it easier for maintainers to locate bugs by comparing the differences between these versions. A version is essentially a marker, a seal of the code base at a specific point in time. However, code is complex, and every change involves trade-offs. Describing how a change affects the code can be tricky, even with natural language. Version number alone can't capture all the nuances of a release. That's why we have changelogs, release notes, and commit messages to provide more context. If you're a public thing, please don't rely on commit messages for context. Please write a real changelog. I see versioning as a way to communicate changes to users. It's a contract between the library maintainers and the user to ensure compatibility and stability during upgrades. I really like this framing. This is why we've been so religious about semantic versioning is if somebody sees a dot update, they can confidently just do it. But if they see a major update, they should at least go check our docs and see what changed. It's to indicate to people doing these upgrades and using these packages effectively how much you have to double check before you confidently hit the ship button. And for most users, hell, if you took a code base using Upload Thing from the V0 that we initially shipped and tried upgrading it to V7 or 8, it would probably be the smoothest migration ever because you wouldn't be using any of the weird features that we introduced and changed and removed over time. Migration guides and paths to be on the latest version are important, and as crazy as Upload Thing is, and as many versions as we have, going from V0 to V7 is not that bad. But there are changes in each of those majors that are worth at least looking at so you know confidently that you're doing things the right way. And as a user, you can't always tell what changed between 2.3.4 and 2.3.5 without checking the changelog. By looking at the numbers, you can infer that it's a patch release meant to fix bugs, which should be safe to upgrade. Should be. The times where it is not are painful. This ability to understand changes just by looking at the version number is possible because both the library maintainer and the user agree on the versioning scheme. Since versioning is only a contract and it can be interpreted differently to each specific project, you shouldn't just blindly trust it. It serves as an indication to help you decide when to take a closer look at the changelog and be cautious about upgrading. But it's not a guarantee that everything will work as expected, as every change might introduce behavior changes, whether it's intended or not. Pumped that Antfu and I fully agree here. That's the point of this contract. And that's why we have semantic versioning. Semver is the shorthand. Semver number consists of 3 parts: the major, the minor, and the patch. Major is when you make incompatible API changes. Minor is when you add new functionality in a backwards compatible way. And patch is when you make a backwards compatible bug fix. Package managers like npm, pnpm, and yarn all operate under the assumption that every package on npm adheres to Semver. When you or a package specify a dependency with a version range, like caret 1.2.3, it indicates that you're comfortable with upgrading to any version that shares the same major, 1.x.x, for example. So now if 1.5 comes out, pnpm will just let you install that. There are problems, though, which is why package locks became so popular, but we'll get there in a bit. As Antfu says here, though, in those scenarios, the package manager will do its best to determine the right version that is the latest, that is most suitable for your project. This convention works well technically. Package releases a new major version. Your package manager won't install it if your specified range is below that major. So if you put out 2.0, but you're on 1.2.3, it won't upgrade to the new major. But this helps prevent breaking changes. But the problem here is human perception. Humans perceive numbers on a logarithmic scale. We tend to see version 2.0 to 3 as a huge groundbreaking change, while version 125 to 126 seems a lot more trivial, even though they both indicate incompatible API changes in Semver. This has been really upsetting to me. As I mentioned earlier, people were upset that Upload Thing had 7 versions despite only being 2 years old. People also didn't see how big a jump 6 to 7 was because 1 to 6 wasn't that big a jump. Version 6 to 7 of Upload Thing was a fundamental change of how the server and client interact that made uploads 10 to 50 times faster. But 1 to 6 were just API changes. And the number doesn't indicate the size of that change. Both in the sense of like, how likely is this to break your stuff? But more importantly, doesn't communicate it in the sense of how important this change is and if you should pay attention and see how big this was. Like the bump to 7 didn't show how significant we had changed things. It was just a 1 number bump from 6 to 7 because humans kind of suck. This perception can make maintainers hesitant to bump the major version for minor breaking changes, leading to the accumulation of many breaking changes in a single major version, making upgrading harder for users. We have this problem right now where we have a bunch of changes we want to ship, but we have to do a major for them. So we're waiting until we have enough and we hit a certain threshold, and then we cut the major. That's stupid. And I hadn't really thought of that as a flaw in Semver until this moment, but he is fully right. The fact that we're scared to do that major jump means that our users aren't getting improved functionality as quickly as they could because all of this is stupid. And on the other hand, version 125 moving to 126 could break a ton of things, but you're not going to care or pay attention because it seems like a small change between those two numbers. I didn't realize that Dominic had a talk about this. That's awesome. If you're not familiar, Dominic's the lead maintainer of React Query now. Legend, one of my favorite people in the space. His blog series, Practical React Query, is incredible. All of these are really good reads. I didn't realize there was one about lessons learned that is specifically about major versions. Breaking changes are not equal to marketing events. Agreed. Progressive. And this is back to Antfu. I'm a strong believer in the principle of progressiveness. Rather than make a giant leap to a significantly higher stage all at once, progressiveness allows users to adopt changes gradually at their own pace, provides opportunities, pause and assess, making it easier to understand the impact of each change. I love this. It's not directly the same, but a thing I often encourage when I'm like teaching workshops or doing tutorials is when you're building a new thing from scratch, try to get all of the parts publicly deployed and connected before you start actually iterating. A common failure case I see is somebody builds a project with like 15 parts all locally on their machine, and then they hit deploy. And there's some catch in one of the services that wasn't quite what they expected. That was a change they made 15 commits ago that they can't see because they weren't progressively deploying and seeing what did and didn't work over time. They don't know what commit it broke in because they never deployed it, so they don't know when it was or wasn't broken. But if you can get the project and all the parts connected, even if the actual app does nothing yet, then as you push up changes and things break, it becomes way easier to realize, oh, it was steps 3 to 4 where this broke, instead of getting to the top of the staircase, looking back and realizing that it's on fire. Being more progressive with the way you ship is so important. It's an interesting proposal. Ant Fu says that he believes we should apply the same principle to versioning. Instead of treating a major version as a massive overhaul, we can break it down into smaller, more manageable updates. For example, rather than releasing 2.0.0 with 10 breaking changes from version 1.x, we could distribute those changes across several smaller releases. So we could have 2 with 2 breaking changes, followed by a 3.0 with 1 breaking change, and so on. This approach makes it easier for users to adopt changes gradually, and it reduces the risk of overwhelming them with too many changes all at once. Yes, and this is why we do new versions relatively regularly with Upload Thing, but because there's this weird assumption that a major version is a big event, so if you have a lot of major versions, you've had a lot of big events, I'm seeing where this is coming from, and I'm getting more excited as we go. Leading zero major versioning. The reason that Ant Fu stuck with the 0.x.x is that it's his own unconventional approach to versioning. I prefer to introduce necessary and minor breaking changes as early as I can, making upgrades easier without causing alarm that typically comes with a major version jump like V2 to V3. The amount of times this has happened in Next.js where people assumed, to this day, people think Next 13 is moving to App Router. Next 13 introduced the experimental app router as an option for building Next.js apps. Moving to Next 13 from 12 doesn't mean rewriting your Next app with a new pattern. It's a version bump to indicate the fundamental changes to the library, the newest version of Node.js support, and the ability to have this new router optionally. But the amount of times I heard, wow, you upgraded to Next 13 with no issues? Even recently, people were surprised I upgraded to Next 15. I wasn't using any of the features in Next 15. I just upgraded so I was on the latest version. What the hell are you talking about? People associate the version of the package with the feature set that they're getting. And it sucks. It's really dumb because then they make bad decisions because of a number they don't understand. And I see this so often that it horrifies me. I don't know if I've just been in Linux for long enough to know that these numbers are just indication of changes, not an important major marketing event to care about. But as I said before, the average human is pretty stupid. My favorite thought experiment. Imagine a perfectly average intelligence person, just somebody in your life that you would say they're not smart, but they're not dumb. They're average. They're right in the middle. Get that person in your head. Think about them. Think about what they can and can't do. Think about how smart or not smart that average person is. Half of people are dumber than them. That's why we have this problem. Anyways, some changes might technically be breaking, but they don't impact 99.9% of users in practice. A change being breaking is relative. Even a bug fix can be breaking for those relying on the previous behavior. One of the best XKCDs ever. Change in version 1017. The CPU no longer overheats when you hold down the spacebar. This update broke my workflow. My control key is hard to reach, so I hold spacebar instead, and I configure Emacs to interpret a rapid temperature rise as control. That's horrifying. Look, my setup works for me. Just add an option to re-enable the spacebar heating. Yeah, every change breaks someone's workflow. What's the alt text on this one? There are probably children out there holding down spacebar to stay warm in the winter. Your update murders children. Classic. Yeah. So every change could break someone. So the concept of major and minor is already relatively arbitrary. Ooh, didn't know this. There's a special rule in Semver that states, when the leading major version is a 0, every minor version bump is considered breaking. I did not know that. Fuck. I am upset at how many of my packages are on a major because you can't go back. Once you've done a certain number, you can't go back. You can't undeploy the package. So as soon as, when we first grabbed the upload thing NPM package, if I recall, I accidentally deployed 1.0 because that was what was generated with NPM. Now I can't do the 0 major version. And what's even more fun is if somebody accidentally uses your NPM token and deploys a major, you can never have this behavior again. Yeah, I am sad that most of my packages are on at least a V1 because I'll never get to use this for them. And now it makes sense why everything's on V0. It makes so much sense now. Wow, we're all learning together, aren't we? And as Ant Fu says, he's effectively abusing this rule to work around the limitations of semantic versioning. The zero major version, we're effectively abandoning the first number, and we're merging the minor and patch into a single number. The minor patch is now treated as like a sum there. The other option that Anfu calls out here is that you can have a regular rollout schedule. Things like Node or Vite or Vitest, they all have an interval where they come out every year with the new version. So when there are breaking changes, they're just waiting for that new major to hit. And then that's the thing that will have those changes. Obviously, zero major versions are not the best practice. Anfu even admits it. While I aimed for a more granular versioning to improve communication, using the zero major version has actually limited my ability to communicate and convey changes effectively. In reality, I've been wasting a valuable part of the versioning scheme due to my peculiar insistence. Well, I'm jealous you get to, because it is too late for me to do it. But Anfu is proposing a change, and I think he's already won me over, and I haven't even read it yet. Epoch semantic versioning. In an ideal world, I wish for Semver to have 4 numbers: epoch, major, minor, patch. The epoch version is for those big announcements, while major is for technical and compatible API changes that might not be significant. This way, we can have a more granular way to communicate change. It is effectively putting a number in front that has no purpose other than marketing, but I think that's a really good idea because people think of version numbers so deeply. Like it's kind of, I'm kind of like, on one hand, this is because humans are dumb. On the other hand, think about the hype for the iPhone 4 launch. It is a way better phone than the iPhone 3GS was. The number in front people get really attached to, so we should treat it that way. We should treat this number as a thing people are arbitrarily attached to for no reason, and the way we handle it is by putting a number there that has no reason or meaning. Accept the fact that's how people think, and put it there and give it no reason because people associate it with stupid things that make no sense. Genius. I'm in. This gives us more granular communication. We also have romantic versioning that proposes human.major.minor. The creator of Semver is Tom Preston Werner, one of the founders of GitHub. He also had similar concerns. Major versions are not sacred. 10 years ago, I sat down and wrote the first version of what became the semantic versioning spec. I was tired of everyone using version numbers in what way they wanted, and I knew that we could do better if we agreed on one way. It worked. Bumping the major often corresponded with a marketing push, which resulted in a natural outcome. Increasing the version for the major was a big deal. Still treated like a big deal, and that's a problem. Major version numbers are not sacred. Sadly, we now treat them like that, which sucks. Cool to see the actual creator of the format coming out and saying this. Back to Anfu. It's too late for the entire ecosystem to adopt a new versioning scheme. If we can't change Semver, maybe we can at least extend it. I'm proposing a new versioning scheme called Epoch Semantic Versioning, or Epoch Semver. It's built on top of the current structure of major, minor, patch, extending the first number to be a combination of epoch and major. To put a difference between them, we use the third digit to represent the epoch, which gives major a range from 0 to 99. Interesting. So we put a bigger number in front. So with upload thing, we'd be on like 776 or something. If we had 76 minor changes, and then an epoch that was like our marketing push for V7, and we made 76 changes since then, and we reset to 800 when we do like a big marketing push. I like this here. So for Uno, it go from 0653 to V65.3.0 because it hasn't had its major. But if they did a major, it would become version 100. My one hesitation here is that there's already a lot of packages that are on version 100 plus, like AWS, and they won't adhere to this. They will never change anything. So fucking AWS, multiply by 1,000. Make it explicitly clear that this is what you're doing. If I see a major version that is 1,000 or 4,000 or 12,000, I know you're doing this new weird versioning scheme. So that was my only suggestion, is add a 0. So it's indicating that you're doing this new weird thing so that people are more likely to try and figure out what's going on if they've never seen it. Or if they have, they'll just know. We can't just add a new dot because of how every single package manager works. They all expect the major version to indicate a very specific thing. And that's the problem. We can't go back and change how every package in the past works just to do this. But we can change what the number means to humans. Unironically, yes, I actually think Windows version numbers aren't that bad because they communicate so much info. Yep. And as Anfu says here, if they make significant changes and they want to do a big marketing, they bump to 100.00 to signal a new era and make a big announcement. I suggest assigning a code name to each non-zero epoch to make it more memorable and easier to reference to. This approach provides maintainers with more flexibility to communicate the scale of changes to users more effectively. The need to bump epoch should be relatively low. Like with upload thing, I would say we're on our second epoch for upload thing. Like we did a big marketing push with V7, which was weird because we were doing a huge marketing for version 7, but where was the marketing for 1 through 6? I even did, like V7 is here. I fell for it. I'm realizing now I fell for the same trap. I have a lot of thinking to do. Even here, I'm comparing V6 to V7, not old to new. If this was version 1XX to version 200, it would make much more sense. And giving me the control to do my marketing around the versioning, separate from how package managers need this information, I really like this. AntFoo's planning on adopting this, and I am very excited because if he has success with this, I am going to do the same. I already think this might be the right call for upload thing, but I'm going to stick around a little bit and see how this goes for Uno, SlyDev, and all the other packages that he is maintaining. And if it goes well for him, I'm going to steal this. This is very exciting stuff. I am genuinely hyped. AntFoo's contributions to the ecosystem are criminally underrated. He is one of the most important devs in modern open source, especially the web world. And he just broke my brain yet again. You gotta stop doing this, Anthony. I can only take so much. But I think I am ready to come out in full support of epoch semantic versioning. I can't see any flaws. This just seems right. It is accepting the weird, stupid position that we are in the weird, stupid way humans think and work, in order to get the right behaviors in our tools while also communicating the things that we need to communicate. It just seems like the right compromise. And I don't know if I'm missing something, but I'm pretty sure I'm in. Curious how you guys feel though, because changing how versioning works is not a simple thing and it's not one we can take back either. Do you think that we're insane for caring this much, or do you think this makes a lot of sense? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, peace nerds.